Hey everyone, it's Jen again. Today I thought I'd make a video on some of the improvements that I'm making to Arcane Dice Wars. So went into it a little bit before with kind of like that get attribute, how that's been helping me a lot with my combat scripts. And I've gone in and I've tried to improve kind of like the whole dungeon exploration navigation scripts, as well as add a movement buttons instead of having like the menu system that would ask if the player wanted to go north, east, west, south, because that was sometimes a little confusing for the player. I think this visual representation is a little bit more clear which direction you're going to be heading in relation to the mini-map here. An extra added feature that I'm going back to add to Arcane Dice Wars that I added to the Villain's Heart is this ability to go into your menus while you are in exploration mode. There's a new tab here for the different types of items that you can have in your inventory. There was a lot of items, so I ended up making them each have kind of their own sub-tab. I've also gone in and made these text buttons able to have the idle and hover color to make it a little bit easier for the player to tell when they are hovering over a button. So what is actually happening when I press that button that's changed from before? If you've seen my video on like how to create movement buttons, it was done in a very simple way and without any objects made. So I had prefaced in that video that I didn't think it was a good system to use if you had a lot of locations, and as Arcane Dice Wars expands, I found that even using objects kind of in the similar way that I was using it to that movement button tutorial was not dynamic or modular or interchangeable enough. It required making a lot of custom scripts for each location. So I've gone in and kind of like streamlined it a little bit more using object properties and that get attribute. So what that looks like here. Before I had kind of like this, so there's a couple problems that I have with this game that I didn't have with Hungry, and one of those things was jumping into a combat script that kind of meant that the game had to keep track of where the player's current location was, because it was going to kind of leave that current location, and then once the battle was over, it was going to have to like recall where the player left off, so it didn't just like dump them off in some random location or back at the beginning of the dungeon or something. So I had created this property of like true, like being their current location, and I had this weird system of having to toggle those on and off to like tell where the player was, and it was kind of a holdover from like Soul Union, because I had used a kind of like a system with that, and that was before I was using objects. So instead of doing it all that really weird roundabout way, I guess it's just how my brain works. I went in and have now these properties for my locations that I'm tracking, that I will use for my movement and for remembering where the player's at. So I have the dungeon or the location objects all made for the dungeons, that they have their own name. which corresponds to their label here. The script that kind of runs when the player is in that area. A lot of that being like dialogue and stuff. We have a script here to kind of bypass the initial start of the label, because if the player goes into a random encounter, I don't want them to repeat the beginning of the label because they're still technically in the same location. We have the number of visits, because that affects the type of dialogue and events that are triggered. And then I have the location that's north, south, east, and west. And some of these locations don't have any locations adjacent to them, like this location 1 here on the map here. We can see that there's nothing that's north of it. The player can't go north, so I just have none written for that. And then I have this function to increase the number of visits that I run a little script every time they enter the label, not return. So this is like basically used to return to the label after a random encounter. So before, I had these old scripts where I had this menu system for moving location, and these had to be done individually for each script. So you can see here, like Dungeon 3 had to have its own version of the menu, movement menu, and Dungeon 4 and Dungeon 5, and so I had to do these individually for each one of these 35 locations. And then I had to do that individually for each of like the 40 some odd locations of the forest, and I had to do it for each one of the 60 odd locations at the sewers. So it started to get to be a real pain, a real hassle. And I know some of these things could probably be even further kind of automated, but I guess it's still a holdover from like working in RenPy and working with like jump and call statements, as I kind of like having each location have its own label. So just for me to organize my storytelling. So, I think these things could also, a lot of this dialogue could also be done in object properties. But I'm not sure sometimes how some of these locations have much more expanded event dialogue and event things happening. I think 27 is one of those. So, like, I just want to be able to have the flexibility to do that within each location. It just helps me visualize it better. But it probably would work out more optimally for maybe programmers to have more of this kind of automated as well. So when we enter a label, I have this variable of current location that I'm setting to Dungeon 1, which is the object Dungeon 1, because it doesn't have any of the string, the quotes around it. I have a call statement to get the location. So this runs every time you enter a new location for the first time. We set it to that object, and then we run this get location. So this is going to update the current location's attributes to be the same as the Dungeon 2 attributes. So when I look into the get location, it does a little transition of the moving, like the screen turning black. The little footsteps for the dungeon is going to be a stone footstep. I'm going to expand this when I add back the forest to, do a grassy footstep if the stage is in the forest. And then I'm going to set the location name, the location north, south, east, west adjacent labels, and then the number of visits, and then the kind of return. I called it region, but it's basically it's referring to the move label under each location. That's going to be the label that the player returns to when they are returning to the location from a random encounter. And then it's going to increase, once it's gotten all of these updated attributes, it's going to increase the number of visits to this current location by 1. So that happens every time the player enters the dungeon in the get location. Then I have this called dungeon encounter, and that's going to be the roll to see if the player runs into an enemy, or if the coast is clear, or if they find money, or whatever little other random story event that I want to have happen. And if they run into an enemy, then it's going to populate the enemies depending on this the enemies that are in the list of randomized enemies that's customized for the dungeon. And then it's going to jump into the guild deploy, which will jump into all these like battle scripts up here, which these battle scripts are used for every encounter in the game. So once the battle has concluded, it's going to go through kind of like the little victory shout outs and stuff, and assign like the loyalty bonuses and all that, the drop bonuses. And then it's going to go to this dungeon location script, where it's going to play the dungeon music again, and then it's going to jump to that location region. So it's going to jump to not the initial label. So like this is the initial label that set the location and did the random encounter roll. It's going to move to this location, which is going to just be like this screen where you have the movement buttons here, and you're going to have the option to go into the menus. So when you go into the menus, this return button is also referring to how to get back to this movement buttons. And that I have set here for the dungeon menu here, where it's just saying, okay, I want you to show the dungeon map again, I want you to show the movement buttons again, and the explore screen again. I want you to pause and wait for the player to interact with the button again. So the movement buttons themselves, I forgot to go over that. So under the movement buttons, we have the each one of the movement buttons is an image button that's set for a position. And then if the location, the north adjacent location, is none, then it's going to display a button that's inactive. It doesn't have an action function, and it's just going to be none, and the player can't click on it. If it does have a north location, then it's going to have the idle animation here, the hover animation to show that it's clickable, and then it's going to run this function that's called set location north. So what set location north is just going to be to hide the movement buttons and have the player jump to whatever that north location is. So these buttons now are completely dependent on whatever that variable object of I keep opening stuff and then okay, whatever this current location and whatever its attributes are that we set in the get location, it's completely dependent on these. So now I can use this get location, set location for any map that I make in the game, and I no longer have to make these like individual movement things for each location anymore, which is like a huge time saver and will definitely make things easier and way faster to add more locations and dungeons and rooms and stuff in the future. Other kind of update that I've done was with my items. So we'll just see how that looks in execution. It's doing the random encounter roll. Now we can see we've moved south one, We're doing the little story bit that's based on how many times we visited this location. And we can see in this location we can't go east or west, but we can go north, so we can backtrack, or we can keep going south. Now we've run into an enemy encounter where we can deploy our units. In this part of the game, you shouldn't normally be able to select all the characters, but I've been testing to make sure that all their skill triggers and everything have been translating over properly, since I've kind of made some adjustments to that system as well.
Let's roll.
There's no wager in this first dungeon.
Skill trigger.
You're nothing.
Skill trigger.
I think my hero is still level 1 right now, so I don't have any morale skills.
Whoa,
I still did quite well. Okay, we have loyalty increase there. We did find some money.
This is justice.
We have our random shouter.
Words can't express, my lady.
We have our scripts here that are based on the number of victories that we've had inside the dungeon. So these little conversations you have with your party members are not going to repeat until it gets to like this point where you've won so many battles and talked to them so many times that they're going to do kind of like a random dialogue out of like 10 different repeatable dialogues. But right now we haven't gotten to that point. And we can see it jumped us back into our location here. Now it's running that little script that it didn't have a chance to run yet. The little dialogue here that would have been this kind of visits for the first time is going to run some different story text there based on that.
As you say.
And then it's going to give us our movement arrows again. It does the random roll again, and now we can see we move 1 south. Okay. Now the other major system that I've implemented here is with the randomized item drops with the when you fight beast units, along with the frenzy mechanic, has been cleaned up. So in order to counter these mages, I need to have a priest in my party, and I need to also have a rogue to counter this this priest monster. Let's see, out of all the elements here, I'm missing air, so earth will probably be a good counter. Let's go ahead and first put an earth priest while I'm thinking about it. Let's go ahead and put Katner, and I'll put Bailiff there too.
Let's roll.
Everything shall go
It's not
according
bad
to
bonuses there. I think we should do pretty well, although I don't have any morale skills because I think this load file, again, I'm at level 0. So hopefully we'll win this.
Double bonus.
That's looking good.
Double bonus. Double bonus. Triple bonus. Skill trigger.
How predictable.
Skill trigger.
Take this opportunity to end this.
Skill trigger.
How predictable.
Double bonus. Skill trigger.
I will fortify our formation.
Whoa, lucky. High roller.
Okay, so out of all the monsters, it picked the item drop from this earth spider, and it gave us a web, which is actually a rare drop for it. So normally I think it gives like a little like kind of a little like insect shell. So how those scripts work is that I've made a made all the item drops into objects, and these objects will display information when you go into your inventory, and they have the properties that reflect their class. This is used for like crafting later on. It's a common type of material that's used for crafting. So that kind of earth silk that priest spider thing dropped here is actually a rare material. When we go to the battle script for how that item drop looks, I do a random roll where it's going to look to see. It only has like a 1 in 30 chances of getting a rare item from either the enemy in the front, the enemy in the mid, or enemy in the rear. Otherwise, it has like a 1 in 9 chances, I guess, of getting the common drop from the middle, the front enemy, or the rear enemy. And so these here that it's referring to is that the enemies themselves have an attribute. Sorry, I think they're listed here. They have an attribute here that shows the object of their 2 drops that they can do, of the common drop and the rare drop. So when that get item script runs, it's going to get the name of the item that dropped, or this is that the get attribute is going to get the item name, and then it's also going to get the quantity that the player has of that item in their inventory, and it's going to increase that quantity by 1. So when they check their inventory, if they already had like 1 earth silk, it's going to give it like 2. It's going to give like +1 to that earth silk, and then it's going to show that they have 2 earth silk. And it's going to display that, it's going to display the text here with the outline that you got +1 of that item drop. It's going to show screen item drop, which the show screen of the item drop is just the item drops nickname .png, because that's how I have it named. And this item pop is just the position of it with a little bit of a linear zoom to make it look slightly animated. But without using all these objects and the object properties, and then the object referring to other objects, and then getting those attributes, my item drop could not be so kind of dynamic. This script would have to have even more if else blah blah blah, that that my coding was kind of like riddled with like hundreds of lines of all the possibilities that it could possibly be, and now I can just have them kind of have them interchanged depending on whatever this variable of the item drop is. I hope you found this helpful. I don't know if I did a very good job explaining it, and again, I don't know if it's even the most optimal way of doing things, but for me, condensing down a function or a gameplay mechanic that would have used to take me like hundreds of lines of code down to something more like this size is pretty huge. So I'm pretty proud of myself with that, and I'm going to keep on working on ways to try to make my programming a little bit more streamlined so that I can more comfortably add features to the game. Okay. Hope you enjoy your process. Have a great weekend and take care. Bye.